When cruising around Europe on your two wheels, don't let border crossings derail your trip. In this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare your paperwork and get it all in order, ready for crossing into the next country. Let's go. This one was completely my fault. So first things first, I'm going to actually talk about documentation storage. And the reason I'm going to do this is because this is really important, it's particularly when you're on a motorcycle. Now, when I am traveling around in the van, I use an A4 binder to carry all of my documentation and all of my IDs. I keep it under the seat so that when I get to a border, and if there is border control, I just pull it out from under my seat and I'm like, there. Jobs are good and have fun, stamp it, let's go. However, when I'm traveling on a motorcycle, having an A4 binder full of loads of documents ready for border crossings is an absolute pain. And there are a lot of documentation you're supposed to be carrying that not a lot of people are aware of, so it really is important. Now, what I recommend is that if you are going to be doing a lot of border crossings on your trip, I recommend you getting one of these clear waterproof Ziploc bags. You can use a sandwich bag. This one is actually from a military ration pack that I used to put my knives and forks in to keep them dry. This thing is really hard wearing, and the reason I like it is because I'll put all my documents in, it's A4 size, and it folds up really well to this size, and then I'll put that in my pocket on the side of my motorbike pants so that when I do get to a border, I can just pull it out, hand it to them, and they can check everything that they need to check. So let's talk about the kinds of documents you're supposed to be carrying when you're crossing the border in any country in Europe, and also even just leaving the UK into Europe. Now, not a lot of people are aware of this, but if you are taking any vehicle across any borderline, you are legally required to carry the original V5. A lot of people get really worried about carrying this because the idea that you might lose it, it's going to cause lots of issues. A lot of people will go ahead and photocopy it and take the photocopy with them. That is a little bit risky. There might be someone having a bad day who is in a mood and wants to take it out on you. I think the vast majority of people genuinely don't care from the experience I've had with border crossings. It's been very rare that I've had my V5 checked. I have had it checked before, but that's once within 3 years, but it was done. Now, if you don't carry the original V5 and you meet someone who is having a bad day and they're like, nah, I'm not going to do it, they don't have to let you cross with the vehicle, because as far as they're concerned, you know, you've got no proof that it belongs to you. And I'll be honest, I think when they do that, they are doing it maliciously, because, you know, they could check where the vehicle's registered or whatever, but it does happen, it's very rare. So do try to make sure you're carrying the V5. Now, what happens if you're in a situation like me and you currently have a rental vehicle? So obviously this vehicle doesn't belong to me, this belongs to Honda Motorcycles UK, and Honda weren't going to give me the V5 for that vehicle. I mean, no rental company would do that, that would be mad. So in this situation, Honda have given me a proof of rental, which is a specific document that says, I don't have the original V5. The reason I don't have the V5 is because I am renting the vehicle. I have been authorized to travel in like a list of countries. So it said like UK, Ireland, and Spain. And then it'll have like the outward date and the return date, which I've had to have this document amended twice because I keep staying in Spain later. So if the vehicle doesn't belong to you, if it belongs to a company, if it's registered to a company, you need to have a printed copy of your rental agreement in place of the V5. So in my binder, I have the V5 for my van and I have the rental agreement for the bike. Now, the next document that you need to make sure that you are always carrying is your passport. I have the new blue one, by the way. Look, I mean, I've completely trashed it already, but yeah, so you need to be having your, God, I've really trashed it. Just iron that out a little bit. You need to have your passport now, particularly because we are now in the European Union. It used to be the case that you could travel with your driving license. No longer the case. So make sure you have your passport at all times and make sure that it has at least 6 months validity on your passport. If there's not 6 months left on your passport, you can be denied access to cross any country. Again, I feel like the vast majority of people don't care. It's one of those things where, if, again, you're meeting somebody who's having a bad day, they could make it a lot worse for you. Don't take risks. I have heard lots of horror stories of people being denied access to boarding planes because they didn't have 6 months on their passport. I've never really heard it in terms of going through like the Eurotunnel or on a ferry. But again, I mean, if it happens on a plane, it could happen on the other two. It is the law. Someone could deny you. You never know what kind of day somebody's having. Now, the other documents that you're supposed to be carrying around is a printed copy of your MOT status and also printed copies of your current insurance policy. And when that ends. Now, I was recently browsing Facebook the other day because I'm in a bikers group for, you know, touring around Spain, and somebody was stopped in the Pyrenees by the police. Now, I don't know why they were stopped. I don't know if it's like the UK where if you're being a bit mischievous on the road and the police pull you over and they look for something. Again, I don't know the reason behind it. All I know is that they posted in the group that they were stopped by the police. They were asked to produce their insurance documents and their MOT documents. And basically they weren't carrying these on them at all. And the result of that was that they got £120 on the spot fine. So, I mean, that's a lot of money for simply not carrying a piece of paper. I don't know if they had access to it in their phone or anything. I don't really know the details, but you are legally required to be carrying around your insurance information and evidence that your vehicle has passed a recent MOT. On top of all of those documents, because the UK is no longer in the European Union, legally speaking, our driving licenses aren't valid anymore in Europe. I have had my license checked the other day, and there were no complaints. I don't know if it was because I was acting a little bit charming, but you are supposed to apply for an IDP, which is an international driving permit, which allows you to drive in other countries. I think it's valid for up to 6 months. However, one of the issues with this is that you cannot apply for it abroad. You have to apply for it in the UK when you're in the UK. Now, I really wanted to rent a vehicle abroad last year. I didn't know about this rule. I just assumed, you know, even though we weren't in Europe, you know, yeah, you know, kind of thing. I wasn't allowed to rent a vehicle with my UK license. They wanted my international driving permit, which was such a pain. I didn't get to rent it in the end. But yeah, especially if you're going to rent vehicles abroad, or maybe rent a bike abroad, maybe you want to rent a bike to go off-roading. I don't know, but long story short, they want you to have this international driver's permit now, which is a pain. You have to pay like an extra 20 quid. Now, by this point, you're basically carrying an A4 binder of your entire life on your rucksack, and you're probably thinking, there can't be any more. There can't be any more. Well, yes, there is. On top of that, because we're no longer part of the European Union, we don't really get to benefit from free healthcare abroad. It used to be the case that if you had to go to hospital abroad, you could just go and then they would bill the NHS the cost of that. Unfortunately, now that is not the case. And as I recently discovered the other day, which is a bit of a pain, I ended up having to go to a hospital in Spain because I was climbing up the driver's side and I put my hand on the seat as I was climbing down, and then the driver's door shut on my hand and it swole up loads and I could not move it. I was really concerned it was broken. I took some painkillers. I thought it was fine. I just kind of sucked it up and carried on like you did. The next day I came off the bike and the pain got a lot worse. I ended up having to drive myself to hospital. I got to hospital and yeah, that's when I discovered naively I wasn't able to benefit from that setup. Now, the hospital explained to me that there was a new system that had come into force that allowed you to basically have the exact same setup that used to be the case. So what has now replaced an EHIC is something known as the GHIC, which is basically just like the Great Britain, I don't know, healthcare card basically. So where you used to get your EHIC number and you used to be able to go around Europe and use hospitals basically like a native citizen, you can now make an application for a GHIC. Again, you need to do this in advance. And this GHIC will get you registered into the European system and allow you to use the hospitals. Now, even if you do have a GHIC in place, I strongly recommend that you get travel insurance. And something to consider as well is the length of time that that insurance policy allows you to stay abroad. This is something I've learned pretty quickly, is that if you are abroad, let's say you go to Europe for 45 days, it might be the case that you're only covered for the first 30 days of that. That's really important to check in your policy. It's also really important to actually read the terms and conditions to make sure you know what you're agreeing to. The next step to be aware of is just the procedure of passing through customs itself, which is basically you want to have all of these documents ready to go. Bikes are notoriously slow for passing through things like this. We have to take our helmet off, we have to take our gloves off, blah, 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 blah. I would actually always recommend keeping those on until they request that you take them off, because there's more situations where they've just not bothered to ask me than there has been me taking them off. And I actually found that just keeping everything on saved me a lot of time. I think only like 20% of the time they've asked me to remove my helmet, which is a little bit worrying, but YOLO. Now, the other thing to be aware of as well is that when you do go through customs, particularly when you leave the UK, they're going to ask you if you have any prohibited items, which includes knives. As you know, as little adventure travelers, almost always carry knives, especially when we're camping, you know, for whittling and stuff, for bona fide scavenging purposes. However, they are going to ask you if you do have a bladed weapon, and if you are carrying a bladed weapon, they will confiscate it off you at any border crossing. The vast majority of the times within Europe, nobody cares. A lot of the time they will actually offer to hold it until you're passing back through again. So again, I remember reading on Facebook the other day about a guy who surrendered all of his camping knives on his outward trip from the UK to Europe, and he was returning in 2 weeks, and then he was returning via the same port. When he got back into the UK, he went to go chat with the customs guys and they returned his knives. I don't know what the crack is in terms of if you were to surrender them on the other side coming into the UK. I think the chances are you're just going to have to cut your losses. So yeah, that is also something to consider, is that, you know, if you have a particular knife that you are very precious about, you know, a lot of our equipment we have for years, I would just recommend leaving it at home. And if you do want a knife for camping, again, you know, they come in handy for a whole variety of things, even fixing bikes a lot of the time. I would recommend just buying probably a cheap one when you reach to Europe, rather than having to risk losing one that you're precious about. Now, the last piece of advice I would have to say is just to be prepared for variability. The amount of time it takes you to get through borders and customs can vary massively, like absolutely massively. You never know what kind of delay you're going to hit. And so always assume that the time that you're going to get through customs, just times it by 3, in my experience. The worst delay I've ever had trying to get through a customs has been about 45 to 50 minutes. And that was due to just the sheer volume of people passing through customs. It was such a pain. It was also really annoying because I'm sat on this motorbike and it was raining at the time. I was not impressed. So do consider that you might end up sitting in the rain for an hour when you get off a boat or plane or train or whatever. It weren't fun, I can tell you that now. It was not fun. But yeah, do be prepared for that. You don't know what is going on when you're passing through that border. They may be dealing with a rather large incident that requires personnel. Border crossings are a lot more simple than they sound, although it sounds quite frustrating having to get all the paperwork together, especially if you're like me and you're not inherently an organized person. But you know, once you get your little pack together, you're pretty much good to go. Now, if you guys do want to see more great motorcycle content, don't forget to hit subscribe. In the meantime, my name's Safi Sprocket. Ride safe, stay crazy, and I'll see you next week. Bye!